accuses Israeli forces of obliterating Gaza's education system and committing crimes against humanity. Schools, infrastructure, universities, and even shelters have been hit. In response, Human Rights Watch is calling on governments to suspend arms transfers to Israel, warning that continued support may amount to complicity in serious violations of international law. To discuss this further, we're joined by Sarah Yager, the Washington Director for Human Rights Watch. Sarah, welcome to Africa World Hour.
Thanks so much.
Let's start with the UN report released in June. It says Israel is obliterating Gaza's education system. What does that mean in practice?
I mean, it basically means that 97% of schools in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. There are entire complexes of schools that have been leveled to the ground. And these schools provide not just education, but temporary protection for people who've been displaced from their homes. And most of the Gazan population has been. Excuse me.
Human Rights Watch is calling for a suspension of arms to Israel. What triggered this time around?
Well, so we've been calling for a suspension of arms transfers to Israel for actually over a year, and that is because of the violations of international law that we have seen in Israel's conduct of this war. Indiscriminate attacks, attacking refugee camps, certainly attacking schools falls into that category. And there are U.S. laws that require the United States to stop sending weapons if these kinds of things are occurring.
From a legal standpoint, what responsibilities do countries like the US or others still supplying weapons have under international law?
Sure. So countries that supply weapons are supposed to do so only if the recipient country is abiding by international humanitarian law. That's basically the laws of war. And this is actually codified into U.S. law. There are laws about U.S. weapons going into conflict and whether and how they should be used. There's also a law that says that U.S. weapons should not be sent to a country that is blocking U.S. humanitarian aid from getting to a population. So this is a whole other law that should really call into question U.S. weapons going to Israel, given that Israel has been blocking aid to the the Palestinians in Gaza since March.
An argument has been leveled by some governments that Hamas has been using schools for military purposes. How does HRW assess this, and what's your response to these arguments?
We looked at two strikes last year, one in July, one in September. We did not see any military target at those strikes. And our methodology is very robust. We use satellites, witness interviews, quite a lot of evidence to make sure that there was not a military target at that site. Schools are protected. They have special protections under international law. Now, if they are being used by combatants, by a military, yes, you can strike that school. But again, Human Rights Watch found no evidence of a military target in these two schools that we looked at.
What could be done now? Because for quite some time, Human Rights Watch has been calling on governments to act, and you say right now is no longer the time to say we can't do anything. What more should be done? What does HRW say right now?
Well, it's a complicated situation. It's been very frustrating that we haven't seen more action. But actually, if you look at arms transfers to Israel, and if you look at the leverage that the United States has because of those arms transfers, it's not very complicated at all. The United States, President Biden before President Trump, and now President Trump should be leveraging that military aid to say, look, no more strikes on schools, no more strikes on hospitals. You must allow food aid in. Otherwise, we are not going to continue to support this conflict.
With regards to children and teachers, the education system under attack, can you just paint us a picture of what's happening and what can remedy the situation?
Sure. I mean, this is so difficult. It is hard. I understand why it's hard for some people to talk about education at a time when the entire population is displaced. They don't have food. They don't have water. Yet the education of this population, of any population of children, is absolutely essential so that you don't lose generations of this community. And so right now, the most urgent thing is to get food and water into Gaza. And then to figure out how to, teachers can't teach if they are starving. So that is the most urgent thing to do.
Still on education, it's hitting very hard on the children of the Palestinians. What are the widespread destruction insofar as their development is concerned?
We're extremely concerned about the children of Gaza. Not only are they not getting an education or health care, they are starving. And so when you combine all of this, the amputations, the missing limbs, the explosive devices that are around that they are stepping on, parents who have been killed, many children are orphans now. This is just a level of devastation that we really haven't seen in modern history.
Has Human Rights Watch perhaps seen a shift from countries that had been previously supplying weapons to Israel shifting, like the US? Have you seen any of those in recent days?
Yeah, we've seen some countries shifting how they're thinking about the conflict. And I think that the starvation of the Gazan population is really bringing some countries to think about this differently, including in recognizing Palestine as a state, but also considering stopping their weapons transfers to Israel. Now, I have not seen the United States strongly consider this or very seriously consider this, at least as part of the Trump administration. But I do hope that those conversations are going on. There was a move last week in the US Congress. It's called a joint resolution of disapproval, which would be a resolution from legislators to stop weapons going to Israel. And we didn't expect it to pass, but the number of yes votes was significantly higher than when they tried this last time. So opinions definitely are shifting.
Apart from arms transfers, what other accountability or pressure can be applied on the international community?
Well, this is why we're trying to collect as much evidence as possible of things like strikes on schools where there are no military targets, because collecting that evidence, we hope, will be essential to getting this kind of justice and accountability for the Palestinian people, just as it is important for Israelis to have justice and accountability for the hostages and for what happened on October 7th. So for both of these things, we are looking to the International Criminal Court and other mechanisms like the International Court of Justice to ensure that that evidence is used to hold people accountable.
And as a parting shot, Sarah, what role do you think Africa and the global South at large can play in bringing about accountability, as well as ensuring that there is a civilian protection?
I love that question. I would like to think that everyone is in this together. This conflict in Gaza has ramifications for every other conflict to come, both in terms of conduct of war and also in terms of humanitarian principles and humanitarian aid. So this is something that every country should be concerned with. And this is why we have the United Nations and other bodies like that, where Africa is a major participant and could really have a major voice. South Africa has done a very good thing in bringing the International Court of Justice case to bear, and other African countries, I hope, will be speaking up, especially at the UN General Assembly in September in New York.
Sarah, really appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
That was Sarah Yager, Washington Director of Human Rights Watch, speaking to us about the destruction of Gaza's education system and HRW's call for governments to suspend arms transfers to Israel.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet, Channel 628.